Hello there. Good to see you again. Hope you're well today. Now we're looking at chapter 17 of 2 Samuel, and we talked about Ahithophel yesterday and discovered that he was Bathsheba's grandfather, and he had very good hidden reasons for wanting to see David's downfall. But this chapter talks about contrary advice. Ahithophel advising Absalom to that he would go and swoop down on the fleeing people that were going with David away from Jerusalem and kill just David. I think the problem was, the fear was that if Ahithophel with his men started to kill large numbers of their own people, that those who supported Absalom would get very angry about that. It seems that Absalom really did not want civil war. He wanted to take over peacefully and become king without too much bloodshed. But Ahithophel had advised that he take 12,000 men and pursue them and catch David on the hop as he was fleeing. And then Hushai, who was the man who had been left in Jerusalem as a spy and had convinced Absalom that he had changed sides and he was not supporting David anymore, and he gave him the opposite advice. His advice is in verse 5 to 14, and in that he says, if we pursued them now, David is not a fool. David is a very clever tactician. He is a good leader of men. He's a good soldier. He will have hidden himself knowing that it is he who is the important person, and if he dies, then the kingdom will be yours. But he will have hidden, and in order to find him, many people will be killed, and the people will turn against you for killing their own kith and kin. So his advice was not to wait and to summon all the people, so that the weight of numbers would persuade those who were on David's side to hand him over. And Absalom listens to Hushai's advice. And then Hushai sends word via 2 men who have to hide because Absalom tries to catch them before they get word out to David of the plans that have been made. And then it tells us in verse 23, after David has quickly gone across the Jordan and is safely at a distance with a river between him and Absalom's men, Ahithophel, it says in verse 23, when Ahithophel saw that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his ass and went home to his own city, and he set his house in order and hanged himself, and he died and was buried in the tomb of his father. He realized that without a quick end to this, that the outcome was going to be David would win. He could see the writing on the wall, as we use as a phrase. Of course, that comes from Daniel, the story of Daniel and Belshazzar's feast. So Ahithophel realizes that he has that David will know what he's done and that punishment will come his way. David, fortunately, does not have to deal with Ahithophel's betrayal and with his advice and the awful things that he'd urged Absalom to do. So I was thinking, my thought for the day really is, be careful who you take advice from. There's something to learn in every passage of Scripture, every story. And these stories are very graphic, they're very extreme, but there's wisdom at the base of them. That there's very few people who give advice which does not have some kind of ulterior motive. There are things, and the past affects the future and the present. And you want to be careful who you take advice from and who you listen to. It's interesting how often people meet someone new and listen to their advice against the advice of someone they've known for years. Now, I'm not saying that that is always going to be wrong. That's not true. It's not always going to be wrong. But if the new person is sent from the Lord and it's well grounded in the Scriptures, that's a different thing. But we need to know where people are coming from. We need to know something about the person we seek advice from. We need, as Christians, to have someone in our life who is well grounded in the Word, is living that life out, is someone who has no axe to grind. Gosh, we use a lot of phrases that are rooted in other ideas. We use colloquialisms, don't we? No axe to grind. We need to think to take advice from people who are trustworthy and people who want what the Lord wants for us in our lives. It is possible, perfectly possible, to have your heart set on a course of action that you feel is from God, and everyone you talk to advises you against it because either they don't trust God, or they have never given their lives to God. They don't understand what it means to hear God speaking to you. And if you listen to that advice, it'll be contrary to what the Lord has said to you, because they won't understand your commitment to God. It is very difficult because we are torn often with advice from people who are related to us or who have been friends for years. Then we come to faith, and then we seek advice from those same people, but they are not in a place of faith, and their advice will be different to the advice you would get from someone who is committed to following the Lord. So we need to be careful who we seek advice from. Of course, the ultimate advice, wisdom we need is the Lord's wisdom, and the wisdom here is to be careful who you listen to. Be careful what you do. Be careful whose advice you follow. And Ahithophel backed the wrong horse. There's another colloquialism for you. He chose the wrong one, and his actions would have shouted loud and clear to David his motivations for things, and he took his own life. Ultimately, he was actually a coward. He didn't face David. He couldn't face the consequences of what he had done. And I think it's very sad to see a great man fall as far as Ahithophel fell. And he fell because he kept a grudge. He kept things in his heart about things that had happened a long time ago. It's interesting. I quite often read murder mystery stories, and how often the murder that is being investigated is rooted in things that happened years previously to the people involved in the story. And we may think we're completely independent of what's happened in the past, and we are in a spiritual sense, but we may not be in a physical sense. Beware of opening up old wounds. Deal with them. Deal with what happens to you before God. Don't carry it into tomorrow, because it may raise its ugly head later on in your life and cause trouble. That's my thought for the day. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.